I don't know what I'm supposed to say, baby, before you walk away. No, I'm in the war, I'm in no race, chasing the time. I've been meaning to find a way to face that I'm out in the water just every day, trying to keep my head above the waves, staying alive. And I don't mean to be the guy that wanna push it to the side, and all the line and not the lie, you know. So when I leave your shit alright, and you're only cycles in your head, baby, I'm just trying to stay ahead. Ooh, just stay alive. I'm not saying you died, you go. But it's something you died to know. Stay alive. It's just something you died to know. Now lately we popping on the edge, and I kinda regret some things I said. I don't want you to leave, so stay instead, and I pay the price. In the morning we'll both be good and gone, and the world will continue moving on. But I swear that there ain't no other one, just staying alive. And I don't mean to be the guy that wanna push it to the side, and all the line and not the lie, you know. So when I leave your shit alright, and you're only cycles in your head, baby, I'm just trying to stay ahead. Ooh, just stay alive. I'm not saying you died.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Boise State Esports broadcast. I'm your host, Jacob Jem Mountain Palmer, and tonight is a very exciting and high-stakes night. If you've been following us so far, you know we've had show matches, we've had scrims, we've had for fun matches against us, against other teams. We've had all variety of shenanigans, but tonight the rubber hits the road as we are having two Mountain West Mountain West matchups against two very tough teams. The stakes are really high tonight. We're going to start off with League of Legends and then go into Overwatch. Joining me is Michael Fish Fisher and Daniel Glovely Clock. It's great to have you two with us. And when I say high stakes, I mean high stakes because the way the Mountain West is working right now is that the top two teams of the top team of each division will go on to the playoffs. Only one team. So we're basically in a situation where we got to win every single game. We're off to a good start. In our last match against Colorado State, we won that one, but now we still have to keep winning against Wyoming. What are we looking at against this team, and can the Broncos continue their win streak?
Well, the last time we were up against Wyoming, it was a brutal 3 games for the Broncos. Overall, both teams played very well, so I think we can expect a difficult matchup even here tonight. We also saw them play incredibly well the last time that we met in the Mountain West Conference Championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be incredibly tough. I mean, both teams are coming in undefeated, so clearly both teams realize what's at stake tonight. If you lose, you have to start rooting for other teams to lose, which is never the right idea. So there's a lot of pressure on both teams. I think we're going to get a very good one. Not surprised if we get another 3-game match.
In matches such as this, we have to look at what the bans and picks are going to be, especially for each player. So what are we looking at in terms of what each player is good at, some top ticks for top possibilities for bans or picks? If I'm looking at what happened last week against Colorado State, we know that Red Hots can be absolutely lethal on the Assassins we're talking about. We'll get to that shortly. Right now, like I said, we are in the Mountain West Esports Series in League of Legends, Boise State Broncos versus the Wyoming Cowboys. It is high stakes. We need to win every game to have a really decent shot at going on to the playoffs. So Can the Broncos continue on their win streak that they had last week against Colorado State? Anyway, as I was saying, Red Hots on champions like the Yasuo and Akali is very, very dangerous. And last week, the first round, he went 15-4-5 on the Akali. So do you think that might play into Wyoming's ban picks at all? You know, some respect bans coming out there?
I mean, certainly, Red Hots has always been a target, trying to get him off of the field because he has so much versatility in just what sort of assassins he can play and his ability to influence the map.
If we look at Doc's keys to the game, like we were talking about, the draft is critical. We also need to have jungle and mid coordination. Make sure to get the first dragon and first tower, and elims have to equal vision or objectives. It's all about that time management. Doc's keys to the games are brought to you by Boise State University. Boise State, where you can combine many different studies, over 300, I believe, 200 areas of study, still very impressive, and have the chance to combine minors, certificates, internships, hands-on research, work opportunities, and more. To make your educational experience unique, visit boisestate.edu for more info. So it's not just Red Hots. You know, we saw some great plays also from Dean last time on like the bar. Dean can be really cheeky with the way he plays his supports and just does these plays that you don't necessarily think of, but they just come out so beautifully. What are we looking at in terms of Dean, and certainly not to discount Woojin, Can't Get Dopamine, and Gimmick? What are heroes that you think, like we were already talking about, would come out targeted against them specifically?
Well, I think one of the great parts about Dean is that's a fantastic question for us because every single week you pick something like, okay, that's going to go top lane, and then Dean plays it in the bot lane. So it's almost impossible for us to predict what Dean is going to play, which makes him so hard to target ban. I mean, we know he loves his Thresh. We know he loves his Pike. Would not surprise me if those are taken away. And then the other one, and I can't say anyone on Boise State's played it in a game I've seen, is Set. This is the first week that, at least on a Friday night, we can see him. He was unplayable the first week, and he was banned last time. So it would have been very interesting to see a Set. The Broncos, as you can see on your screen, they look very ready, saluting each other. They are very excited to get into the showdown against Wyoming.
I think as far as Dean goes, one of the great things about the current meta is that it really supports some of his favorite champions. It's a very aggressive bot lane meta, focusing around champions like Nautilus, like Leona, like Pike. Someone who can get in there and initiate the fights very quickly, very safely, and pick up the eliminations. Aside from that, maybe we could see Nami tonight. She's been rising in prominence, especially with Leona nerfs just hanging over the horizon. So we'll see what we get.
And we've talked a little bit about mid and bot lane now, but let's go to the jungle and top lane as well, because if we were to look at last week, Woojin and Can't Get Dopamine actually had the same champion for both matches, Woojin on the Maokai and Can't Get Dopamine on the Ivern. Do you think those are any possibilities for bans based on how they performed last week?
I don't think we'll see an Ivern ban, most likely. Not that Can't Get Dopamine didn't do well on that champion, but didn't have as huge of an impact on the game as some other champions in his pool might, like Olaf and Nunu. The Maokai, on the other hand, I think it provided so much to the team in terms of its safety and its ability to scale into that late game and just provide this huge front line for Boise State. So if they do not want to run the Ornn, who I think is one of the strongest top laners right now, they do have an alternative tank.
Yeah, I think top lane completely depends on if Ornn is taken away or first picked by Wyoming, if they are ever in that situation, because he is so strong right now. I do agree with you, Glovely. I don't know if we'll see an Ivern, and that's one of the nice things for Boise State is, while Dopamine's a new jungler, it's hard to ban him out because he's been really sort of experimenting on the fly. We've seen him play a farming jungler, a ganking jungler, so it's hard for teams to really target him because he doesn't have that, okay, we know he's going to play a Nocturne like we saw a ton last season. Okay, we know he's going to play maybe a Lee Sin. So I think he's doing a really good job of spreading his picks out so teams can't really target him down.
Well, and also we talk about things like Ornn in the top lane, unless, of course, Dean chooses him to run as support in the bot lane, as we've been saying.
Yeah, I really think that being able to take Ornn as a support opens up so much flexibility for Boise State, because even if you do try to find a good matchup into the Ornn, some sort of hyper carry, Boise State can just flex on you, send the Ornn down to the bot lane, and pick up something a bit more aggressive for Woojin.
In terms of the bans that Boise State had last week, there were 3 bans that were the same basically for both games that Boise State played against Colorado State. That was Kassadin, Renekton, and Olaf. Do you think those characters are candidates for bans this week for Boise State, or were those more targeted against Colorado?
I think Olaf, it's safe to say, is a safer ban every week. The other 2, those sound like more targeted. Those are very niche, and in the right hands, they're incredible. But I think it would not shock me if Olaf is once again first pick, first ban on either side.
I mean, we keep talking about him here on desk. He is just so powerful with his ability to run you down and ignore whatever you throw at him. We've now seen that Can't Dopamine can, in fact, play him, and that's a good thing because it's one more tool in Boise State's arsenal that you have to respect.
So are there any champions that for just pure entertainment value you would like to see tonight? I mean, I know Glovely, we always have
we'll
your
ignore
Garen.
the obvious Garen pick, but I also think it would be really fun to, it's always fun, the idea of seeing Teemo out there. I don't think it's likely, unfortunately. It might be fun to see Set because he's the new champion. This is the first time that he's been available, and he does have from what I heard, 57% win rate right now, so very powerful champion if you can play him.
And the one I want to see is Senna. Because if you look at the pro meta, Senna is the AD carry right now. Every lane is Senna versus Aphelios. I want to see if there is trickle down. I want to see if at the collegiate level, Senna is something that people want to bring out in the bot lane. And there we go, Globally, just like we talked about. That's a first ban Olaf immediately for Boise State.
It's such a powerful pick with the ability to run you down, and Ornn going to be the answer on the other side. 2 very powerful, very meta picks right off the bat. So no target bans quite yet.
No target bans quite yet, but to answer your question, I got to say, Dean really sold me on the Bard last time. Just seeing all those magical journeys, those cheeky plays, it was really fun to see. To see that again this week would be nice.
Not a problem.
Misfortune going to be taken away by Boise State. She has a very niche role, I would say, Glovey. If in certain team comps, and we've seen it with Boise State, if you can allow her ult to be the primary factor of her damage, she's fantastic. And then the Aphelios ban on the other side, another AD carry that is just seeing a ton of run right now. Very glad I don't have the PhD in Aphelios school to understand what is happening when that champion is on the Rift.
You know, I have so many thoughts about his design, but that's something that I could possibly devote an entire episode of AFK to. So instead, we're going to see Jarvan the 4th banned away. Very powerful early game ganking jungler, so that's going to be pushed away from Wyoming.
That is, if I understand, one of Can't Get Dopamine's top picks for the jungle, along with the Olaf and Nunu.
Yeah, to me, that tells me that Boise State already has a jungler in mind who is niche and fits a certain game plan, because Olaf and Jarvan 4 are just they can do anything. They can go tanky, they can go supporty. There's the Nunu taken away, as Jim Mountain just mentioned, so maybe Boise State played their own hand, and so now they banned out all of Can't Get Dopamine. Like I said, he's been experimenting, and maybe that's there's that Ivern again that we both discredited globally.
I'm not entirely sure that I would have made that as my first pick, not because it's a underpowered champion or anything. It is a great champion, but it doesn't necessarily offer the same level of impact that some more powerful champions in the game would offer, something like, say, a Nautilus.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't know if Ivern is that high on the priority list. You might have to pick him before the second phase of bans, because that's when they might target that down, as the Ezreal is going to be picked up there by Wyoming. To me, that says they're going to be playing a very late game comp, because Ezreal, he is hard to kill in lane, but he's not going to kill anyone because he's got to go tier the goddess. He's got to get those stacking items, and he's got to build a Triforce. So you're not going to kill him, but he's not going to do a lot of damage unless he gets a gank from his jungler.
Speaking of ganks from your jungler, Zac is going to be picked out. That's a great champion for getting those ganks off because of the strange angles he can come at you once he ranks up his Elastic Slingshot. So much range and mobility on that one ability. Caitlyn being hovered as the alternative pick there for Boise State would combo well with the Ivern. You get extra headshots if you were standing in a bush when you fire your gun, and Ivern can set up bushes wherever he wants. It is going to be Caitlyn, and it looks like Thresh being hovered. Favorite pick for Dean and strong in the meta. So there we go. That's your bot lane.
Yeah, I really do like that. I like the Ivern and the Caitlyn pick as well. The Nautilus going to be picked up. You have to assume that he would go bot lane. That is very prevalent in this meta as well. So now my concern becomes Caitlyn doesn't have a lot of escapability. You have the net, the 50 caliber net to get away just a little bit, and you can also trigger a headshot. But if Zac jumps on you, if Nautilus then hooks you, good luck trying to get away from that. And then we're going to see one of those assassins. Once again, that is Fizz banned away. Assumingly, they're going to target the Red Hots mid lane there for Boise State.
You know, I don't think we've actually seen Red Hots play Fizz ever before, so that is a very strange ban to me.
But
Maybe
we
he's been
are
practicing
on
it.
10-2, where Akali basically is not going to be usable in these kind of games, so I think they might be trying to predict what assassins he would be rotating over to.
So Nocturne going to be banned away. And personally, I would have banned out a different assassin. I mean, we've seen that there are other champions that
like
he's played
Yasuo.
Like Yasuo, like
Yeah.
Kiana. So at least one of those champions is still going to be on the board and available for Boise State. As Nocturne is banned away, we've seen that champion many times back when Boise State ran their Bounce House comp, and Diana is going to be the other assassin taken away from Red Hots.
Yeah, it looks like that's all target bans onto Red Hots, targeting those assassins, but leaving Yasuo on the board is interesting to me, and so I'll have to see what they want to go with there. I'm not sure the Nocturne ban is my favorite. It was Fiora, the last one. I do like that. You already have a Zac jungler. Nocturne, he's been played top. I don't think he's the strongest person to be played top, especially with how we know Woojin loves to play tanks. So I think that Nocturne ban could have been a little bit better. Rumble being brought in, that is a champion that we have seen do some serious damage to the Broncos earlier this year.
Yeah, and the last time we saw the Wyoming top laner, he was very carry-oriented, and it gave Woojin a very difficult time because he wanted to try and set up tanks and enchanters and be generally safe in that top lane. Rumble is a champion that really bullies you in early, so if you don't have a strong early game, you can get punished. Sion has maybe not the strongest early game in the world, but he's got some decent survivability at least, and even if he does get eliminated, he can still potentially turn it around with his passive.
That's something that we saw pretty consistently last week too, with Woojin on the Maokai. There were some pretty aggressive ganks early on from Colorado State that got them some eliminations early on.
And the thing I like about Sion is he is the initiator on this team right now. I mean, if we assume that Red Hots is going to play an assassin, it's going to be the Corki. Still, that's not something you initiate on. Sion can ult in, and then if he gets a knock-up, even a slow, he can start a lot of fights, which is what I think Boise State before that pick was missing. So I do like how he fits into the team as sort of that initiator. Got to hover the Aatrox there as well. So I think that is going to be a Rumble mid, actually. Rumble mid has been the new meta in a lot of competitive games, sort of transitioning down to avoid the tanks in the top lane that he couldn't kill. So I did like that. Malphite being locked in still tells me that's the top laner. So I'm interested to see how Corki versus Rumble goes, because Rumble loves to pick on these mid-mages like a Kiana, like an Akali, like a Yasuo. Corki has that range. You're not just going to be sitting in Flamespitter while trying to CS.
On top of that, Corki is what is bringing the ability power damage to his team. Sion, okay, for just a moment I thought that the Sion, little strangeness there as champions are being swapped around. It is going to be Sion Malphite top. So we're going to have a fun little wet noodle fight up in that top lane as the two have so much health and armor and won't really be able to do much to each other.
I think a lot of this comes down, and you can correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, Glovely, is how many initiators is Wyoming going to send at Gimmick? I mean, you think about it, Malphite can ult in, Zac can slingshot himself in, and then Nautilus, of course, can hook you in and depth charge. Are they just going to leave Rumble and Ezreal in their own back line to sort of peel for themselves? Because they could basically prevent Gimmick from even playing the game if they send all three of those members in his face every team fight.
It is true, but don't forget that there are a lot of tools that Boise State has in order to protect him. You have Thresh who can throw down the lantern to either pull him out of harm's way or provide a shield. You have the Trigger Seed coming in from Ivern, and that's going to scale up very quickly because Ivern likes to buy those support items. You have the option to throw down things like the Redemption. So you have a lot of tools that you can use to get the Corki and the Caitlyn, your big carries, away from that terrifying front line. As far as I'm concerned, Malphite is the biggest threat because there's nothing you can do to stop his initiation but flash.
Would you say, from where I'm looking at with Malphite, as you said, Glovely, kind of the wet noodle fight up against with both just really tanky heroes. We were talking about Rumble when we thought he was going to be in the top lane. He can do, some bullying, which is where Woojin, if there was an opening against Woojin because he scales so well into the late game as a player, that might be a threat to him early on. But now, like you said, with the Malphite going out in the top lane, do you think that's overall a better benefit to Woojin and plays to his strengths more?
I think the biggest thing is that as long as you can poke a Malphite and make sure that he doesn't get his passive up frequently, you can win the lane as just about anyone. It's just a matter of how easy it is to do. So in this case, the Scion does have the ability to poke using the Q, using the Roar of the Slayer, Decimating Smash. Those two tools do give him the range to be able to poke out the Malphite if he's able to land them. So it's going to be all about positioning in that top lane.
Yeah, and I think this has to favor Boise State because in a tank versus tank fight, you're not going to see anyone really get ganked. You're not going to see anyone really die. The times that the tank top lane has struggled for Boise State is when you see a hyper carry like a Riven, like a Rice, something that can pick up a lot of kills and sort of scale into that lane. And we even saw with the Rumble, I believe Mizzou played it earlier this year against the Broncos and had a lot of fantastic results. So if I'm Wyoming, I would have loved to have put Rumble top and put something else mid with more power. So I think Boise State has to be very happy that it's going to be, as you mentioned, that wet noodle fight in the top lane where yeah, sure, you can make sure Malphite doesn't get his shield, but he's going to build so much armor. You're not really going to do much damage to him anyway. You're not going to kill a Scion either. So it really favors Boise State, I think.
Yeah, especially with the way that Scion essentially scales infinitely. Not to mention, something that a lot of people forget is that Scion is not a tank or a vanguard. He's designed as a juggernaut, which means he can build damage items, things like the Black Cleaver, which considering he's running 2 marksmen on his team, would be a very useful item. He can run Titanic Hydra to enable his lane push and give him some additional damage in fights. So a lot of tools that they can use there. I really like Boise State's draft.
My only concern is if Woojin is top lane, if he can't be in the fight, how do they initiate? I mean, yes, you have the Dean hook, but you have a 3/5 chance of hooking a tank in either Malphite, Zac, or Nautilus. So how does Boise State engage besides just engaging behind Woojin's ultimate? That's my one concern for the Broncos right now.
Well, they do have the root collar, and of course I'm assuming that Woojin will most likely be taking teleport. So he has the ability to very quickly cross the map. Can also commit his ultimate to it if Boise State is in the right position to do so. So they have tools to engage. There's also the root collar from the Ivern, the death sentence, and flay from the Thresh. So they have tools that they can use to engage. You could even use the upgraded package.
That is true. That is true. So maybe even for Wyoming in that case, you gank early top lane, not getting a kill, but to blow teleport advantage then.
Right, that's what I would think, just to make sure that you don't have that pressure on the map, because Boise State does have a primary initiator. It's not their only initiation tool, but it is their best.
What are you thinking overall in mid lane, too? We were talking about Red Hots can be such a devastating force if he gets ahead, and we were talking about how this is sort of an interesting matchup between the Corki and the Rumble.
I think the one thing that Rumble really favors in this matchup is his ability to wave clear. Because yes, Corki can also wave clear, but he has to commit mana in order to do so. And now we're getting on to the Rift.
Yeah, I think the nice part about for Wyoming having Rumble in the mid is that he can rotate down to dragon fights. That ultimate for Rumble can be a game changer. I've seen it personally this year in a game for Boise State. Unfortunately, it was against the Broncos. Win a 1v3 with that ultimate because of the amount of damage it does. So if he is able to play very safely and is able to rotate down to an early dragon fight, that could be key for Wyoming in sort of using that Rumble power because he's not going to get many kills against the Corki because it's so hard for him to get into range.
And pretty soon like I said, it's all going to be on the line because the Mountain West, the way it's constructed this season is that there are no semis. It's just one team from each division. So Boise State really, they have some momentum behind them, but they definitely have to, bring it to the table and not falter in any way, shape, or form if they want to continue their hopes of getting to the finals.
And before we get to anything too crazy, as there's not going to be any invades, though Woojin and Witchell might trade a little bit. Any keystones catching your eye here, Glovely?
I don't think there's anything too surprising across the teams. If anything, I'd say that it's interesting to note that Woojin has decided to favor Grasp of the Undying, going for that extra health scaling that you get off of the triggered auto attacks, as opposed to something like Arcane Comet, which would allow you to poke out a Malphite faster, and would also allow you to take the Mana Ring, which would allow you to sustain yourself longer in lane to poke more against him.
We'll have to see a little bit of damage trading there in the mid lane. And there we go, as we're talking about the key for Woojin is to prevent Witchell from getting that shield of just sort of builds up over time. Every 10 seconds that Malphite doesn't take damage. Where do you think the first gank should come from Can't Get Dopamine here for Boise State, Lovely?
As far as I'm concerned, in the top lane, you don't really have a lot of damage on that Scion, especially in the early game with no items. Bit of a trade there in that middle lane. Great engagement from the Rumble there to get some damage down onto Red Hots. But you need to have damage in a lane in order to really pull off an effective gank. And I don't think Scion has that much ability, at least in the early game. Maybe he can substitute with it the fact that he has crowd control and could follow up with a root call or follow up a root caller very easily. But otherwise, I'd say that you'd want to focus on either the mid lane where you've got that Rumble who's relatively immobile, or the bot lane where you have the ability to follow up and you've got the damage coming up with the Caitlyn, as well as some potential late game scaling.
Yeah, and I think that is the one thing there with that Rumble mid, is we are going to see, here comes Cake Dopamine. He's going to go in the top lane. Witchell is going to get slowed. Unfortunately, they're going to get that flash away, so they do burn the flash. Nothing else for that. I think they were trying to once again get the teleport. But here comes Olay. He had the same idea, just a quick little jump in. But here comes Nautilus. They're going to engage on Gimmick in the bot lane. The Flay's going to bring Birdman back. A little bit of poke, but nobody goes down as Papa is going to continue that Flame Spitter on Red Hots in the mid lane.
That was such a smart move to counter that engage there. Hook came in to try and capture the Caitlyn, but a really smart play not only to stop the engagement potential from that Nautilus, but also triggered Aftershock, allowing him to have additional armor and magic resist and body block for the Caitlyn, allowing them to win that trade.
That was a good job there by Boise State. As I mentioned in the pregame, that's my one concern is Gimmick. Caitlin's just not a mobile hero. We see a little bit of damage there, making sure he can get out of being hooked, being jumped on by Zach. And I think you mentioned ganking mid, and that is the one thing that I wanted to bring up, is that Rumble, if he ever uses his Flame Spitter to last hit, he's just going to make his way push because it hits all these minions. So he's constantly going to be pushed. As we're going to see a gank there. Cake Dopamine. They already got the blink away, and Palm Goat is going to go down. First blood over to Gimmick.
And that's so importantly because Caitlyn scales really well into that late game. She has a great early game because of her ability to poke and harass, but she struggles in the middle game when other champions are hitting their power spikes, and she just doesn't quite have all of her crit items there. If you get her through her mid game by getting her additional eliminations, she becomes a terrifying monster for the entire game.
And just looking down at that item, we talked about it in the pregame. Ezreal has one of the most expensive carry builds where he has to start tier. He started with a Cole. That is going to put him so far behind on his Tier of the Goddess build. It almost to me feels like a mistake. Just even if you can't afford a tier, just get a Mana Crystal, get something. Don't get a Cole.
And not just the Cole, it's Cole Doran's Blade. He didn't pick up any other items that are going to be able to be useful to sustain. Even a Corrupting Potion might have been better in this situation. So it just goes to signal that Wyoming absolutely has to stay back and farm.
Here we go. Dean's going to try and get a roam. Unfortunately, not able to get that hook. The Flay is going to land, but not enough damage as Papa was already under the tower. A great roam there by Dean as he knew his carry had back. Got some items. Already has a BF sword. Gimmick does a BF sword to a Cole. I would think if you're Kanky Dopamine, you sit bot lane because that AD advantage is massive right now.
Absolutely, and I would want to pressure it. Meanwhile, Wujin having just a fine time up here in the top lane, roughly even in farm. Actually, he's a little bit ahead because the wave is currently pushed towards him, so he is going to be able to force that off. But then now there's a gank attempt in the mid lane, not able to follow that up. Rumble relatively safe there, able to walk the other way.
And I want to see Boise State force the dragon right now. It is the Infernal Drake, and you have such an advantage with Caitlyn and Gimmick having a BF sword versus that Cole for Palm Go. I would love to see them just force this Infernal Dragon right here, knowing how weak Wyoming is.
And as we're talking about the dragon, there was a little bit of confusion last week over, or not so much as confusion, but just a little bit of a misunderstanding on the new effects of the dragons here in Season 10. Glovely, how have those new effects affected the game overall?
The main change is actually we're going to have to talk about this bot lane fight.
That's why you picked Dean right there. The Lantern's able to get Gimmick to safety, and they're going to just laugh at that Wyoming gank. And here comes the teleport from Wujin. Unfortunately, he doesn't land a knockup. Olay going to get played back once again, though. He does have that Zac passive, and Boise State knows. So the Broncos avoid a gank and get a ton of damage out.
Teleport from Boise State, so that's going to be committed over, but they did get a flash in exchange. So overall, one summoner for one summoner, but I'd say that that teleport is far more valuable.
And they're going to use that teleport, it looks like, to start that dragon. Here we go on the Infernal Drake. Wyoming, if they know Boise State is there, which I don't see any wards. There were a couple wards in the bottom bush there that they would have had to walk past. The Cowboys do not want to contest it, so that is the first dragon of the game over to the Broncos, going to be that Infernal Dragon.
You mentioned earlier that it's really dangerous to have that Rumble and his ability to roam down to the Dragon Pit, but if you're playing a Corki and you can shove Rumble into his tower and force him to be punished, force him to be either vulnerable or to lose minions, he can't join those fights. So in the end, Boise State, because they created that pressure bot lane, and because Ivern can set up so much vision blockage with the brush collar, he has the ability to essentially single out the dragon. So Boise State picking up their first objective, and the Infernal Drake is going to be a good one.
And as we were saying, some different changes to the effects in Season 10. Infernal Drake still gives the damage boost, but back to my question, Lovely, we're seeing changes on the Cloud Drake, some changes on the Mountain Drake. How does that play into the overall metagame?
I think the biggest change, in my opinion, are the changes to the Mountain and Cloud Drakes. The original Mountain Drake gave you additional damage to objectives, and League of Legends is a very objective-based game. Currently now, it grants you armor and magic resist, which means it really favors if you have tanks on your team, which is something that didn't happen previously. It was such a damage-based meta. On the other hand, there's also the Cloud Dragon, which used to give you out-of-combat movement speed, which was really situational unless your name was Hecarim.
That is true. Now, I want to talk to you about this item I see here. Red Hot's going with the Hex Drinker. We both thought that was going to be an AP, Corky. It still can be. But building a Hex Drinker, to me, tells me that Red Hot's is going AD, which completely removes any sort of AP threat for Boise State right now on their team.
Well, don't forget that Corky's abilities mostly deal magic damage, and his passive enables him to deal additional magic damage with every auto attack. But he still scales with attack damage. So you can still build AD. It is still better to do so. I think that Hex Drinker is a really smart move into a Rumble because it gives you not only a little extra magic resist, but if Rumble does end up dropping an equalizer on you, you've got an extra layer of safety to get through the burn.
We can see Boise State right now with over a 1K gold lead certainly has the momentum on what does Wyoming need to do. We see there's a Rift Herald and an Ocean Drake will be coming up pretty soon. What's the #1 priority, I think, would you say for Wyoming to turn this around?
Just let everybody farm. I mean, really just let Ezreal farm. I mean, that's what, his Tear of the Goddess, he didn't get it till 8 minutes, so that's going to be very far behind. He can't upgrade to a Mana Moon for the faster stacking. He can't start on his Sheen for the poking. So I think the biggest way for Wyoming is to not take fights, to play very safe, ward up everything you can, and just let Palm go get back to where you expect an Ezreal to be.
Yeah, at this point, the only lane that you can really potentially gank is the mid lane, and that's still a very difficult lane to gank because Corky can Valkyrie out of almost everything Zach has available to him.
And especially because with the Hex Drinker, it's going to limit any damage. We're going to see the hook onto Palm Goat. Unfortunately, the play isn't able to get there. Birdman, though, he's going to depth chart onto Gimmick. He flashes away from the Ezreal, but Olay is here. Dean going to be the first one to go down. Flash comes out from Zach as well. Gimmick, unfortunately, a sitting duck, and Birdman picks up a double kill for the Cowboys.
Well, just as we're talking about playing it more passively, Wyoming comes and proves us wrong.
It just goes to show that there is an alternative option. You get your Ezreal ahead as soon as you get him stacking more items and more damage potential just in his item pool. Once that tier finally builds up, he's going to be such a threat. So if you can accelerate that, that's another win condition.
And I will say in Wyoming's defense, they really sort of predicted Boise State to get aggressive. Olay was just sitting there, didn't slingshot in until the attempted kill had already gone out and the flay had been committed. So that was a great job of Wyoming almost baiting Boise State into being too aggressive.
We're now looking at the gold lead here. Boise State is slightly ahead, but that's mostly from CS now. They are behind in kills, but there is also their dragon there that's going to help amplify their stats a bit. We haven't hit that mid-game power spiky yet. We're still waiting on something like Trinity Force from Corky or Infinity Edge from that Caitlyn, both powerful items. So now it appears that the Rift Herald has been summoned on the Rift.
Yeah, it does look like Can't Get Dopamine, I believe, was able to pick that one up. They're going to turn that into a first tower for the Broncos. There's Shelly. If the Broncos can clear that wave, might even be able to get a second charge off. We'll have to see. And I did want to ask you, Glovely, about Ezreal. We talked about he's got to build a tier and a Trinity Force, and there's sort of two ways. You can either go tier into Sheen, and then you can finish your Tear of the Goddess, or you can go straight to the Mana Mune, which is what Palm Goat did. Which build do you think is better in this case, the Mana Mune, or should he have gone for Sheen first and then finish his Mana Mune?
I think that the Mana Mune was the right idea. He needed damage, and he needed it as fast as possible. You get more of it out of the 3 mana.
There's the equalizer down in the mid. Unstoppable Force onto Dean as well. Witchell going to pick up that kill. So a third one over to Wyoming in the last few minutes.
They didn't manage. They also committed the two-shot barrage from Ezreal, trying to give it over to him, but ultimately decided to take it themselves and not commit that to him. So that's a bit unfortunate for their situation, but they did give it over to a good target.
Depth charge is going to fall on Red Hot. Witchell is going to have to use stopwatch. Olay is in the back line. Witchell's got to get away. Here comes Woojin. Lands right on top of Witchell. The first one down. Boise State going to kill Zach, but he's going to go into his passive. Can the Broncos pick it up? It looks like Wyoming wants to disengage, and they are going to pick up Olay as well. Palm Goat now very slowed as well. Maybe got a little bit too close. Unfortunately, catching an Ezreal is so hard, so that's 2 kills and a dragon for Boise State.
Flash is committed on both sides, but one of the big things we saw in that fight was how much damage Woojin did with that ultimate when the unstoppable onslaught comes charging through. He practically just deleted the Malphite from the fight, following up that initial ultimate with the decimating smash. And that was so huge because you're getting so much damage out of your tank of all things.
Yeah, that was my one concern, is that Wyoming maybe had 2 tanks, because we saw they had the advantage, but it was a Malphite, it was a Zac, and it was a Nautilus. There wasn't a lot of damage coming out. But as I'm looking at Witchell's items, and I saw Arcane comment, and I was going to comment on it, but got distracted, this looks like an AP Malphite. This is not a tank Malphite. You look at that build, that Sorcerer's Shoes, it looks like he might be building for a Ludens. He has a Doran's Ring as well. This isn't tank Malphite for Wyoming.
And that would explain why his health bar just absolutely melted, because he is trying to put so much emphasis on that unstoppable force engage to just delete Boise State's backline. If he manages to find multiple carries, that could be dangerous for Boise State.
Well, he has to unstoppable force away from there. With the Broncos getting that bot tower, their bot lane is free to roam, and they have created a ton of pressure and might be able, looked like for a second, Gimmick was deciding if he wanted to get this top tower. He ends up deciding on it, so might trade it for a mid tower there, so some damage is going to come out from Wyoming, but when that bottom tower is cleared, your bot lane can really do whatever they want, and that's what Boise State's doing right now.
Engagement up in the top lane now as Zach tries to do something. Isn't quite able to force Boise State away. Is able to in the end only because of the tower pressure. But they still have so much focus, and now Dean's coming up from the bottom lane.
Here comes Dean trying to hold that death sentence for as long as possible. Can't get Dopamine is there, but so is Witchell. That might be an agreement to disengage at least for now, but you have 4 Broncos on 2. Wyoming smartly going to fall back there. We are going to see somebody hit that vision cone. I believe that was Birdman. I don't think he engages as a tower goes over to the Broncos.
So even though we're seeing the eliminations tied 3-3, we're looking at almost a 3K gold lead for Boise State, 2 towers, and consistently better farming stats across the lanes.
It just goes to show that it doesn't matter how great your laning is. You need to be able to do something whenever you pick up an elimination. And Boise State has been doing a fantastic job of turning those eliminations into objectives.
Now, I will have to say, this item caught my eye. Merc's treads on Gimmick. I get it, but I don't get it.
So there's so much focus on Gimmick in this game now as they're going to dive in onto Dean.
They're going to jump onto Dean. The Slay was able to stop the knockup, but there are 4 Cowboys surrounding him. Depth charge comes out, but he's still alive. Shield from the Ignite as well, and the Broncos going to turn on the re-engage. Papa is taking a ton of damage. He's going to go down. It looks like here comes the headshot on Olay. He's going to go down as well. Everybody else runs away. A great counter engage and 2 kills for Boise State.
There was all that engagement onto Dean, but they used so many powerful tools, including the Equalizer, which actually missed him, and he negated so much damage with the intelligent use of that stopwatch. So great play by Dean there, setting up his team, and Wyoming just doesn't have damage. Ezreal is too late game, and they don't have damage coming out from their other lanes and carries.
That call once again for Ezreal is just so confusing. I get why you would want to build it, but at the same time you need to ramp up. But I still want to visit these Merc treads because almost every carry that isn't Ezreal needs to build attack speed. And in the late game, Caitlyn needs a lot of attack speed to get all those headshots off, especially stacking them in the bush. So I still have to think, I get why for all the tenacity, but I still have to think that should have been Berserker Greaves.
I think there are 2 reasons for it. First of all, yes, absolutely the tenacity. That's huge, especially when you're consistently laning against a Nautilus who brings crowd control in every single part of his kit. On the other hand, I also think it's very important because most of the damage coming out of Wyoming is magic damage based. Aside from that Ezreal, we have the Zac, the Malphite, the Rumble, the Nautilus. All of them are dealing magic damage. And if you can survive Malphite's Unstoppable Force combination, especially when he's building AP, just because you have a little bit of magic resist, that can mean the world between a won and lost team fight.
We'll have to see how it plays out. We are going to see Red Hots jump onto the second Rift Herald. That's the other new change in this season, is that Rift Herald now can respawn a second time. As we're going to see Olay, he's going to jump in, gets the knockup onto Can't Get Dopamine. Nothing else is going to land, though. And here comes the teleport equalizer right on top of Wujin as the Broncos disengage. Witchell teleports in as well, but both sides will walk away. Boise State with the advantage because that equalizer we talked so much about being burned there by Papa Francesco.
They did have to burn the upgraded package, though, so that is an unfortunate trade in their exchange, and they didn't manage to get the Rift Herald off of it. So Boise State really only gaining a pressure advantage as Unstoppable Force comes through. There's so many team members. Gimmick does go down, so Boise State has lost a lot of their damage, but they still have a mid laner. Where is Red Hot putting as much damage as he can on the fight? Both teams layering their crowd control on top of each other, and Can't Get Dopamine goes down, or manages to pick up Papa Francesco. That's an exchange in the fight. Zac's passive is popped, and it looks like they're going to give it over to Red Hots. Killing spree for Red Hots.
You can see what Wyoming is trying to do. They landed the Unstoppable Force. They landed the Slingshot. But with the Ezreal, they don't have enough damage right now. It looked like a perfect engage for Wyoming. That's the stuff you dream of. It's just they didn't have enough to finish off the rest of the members of Boise State. The Broncos want to turn this into a Mountain Dragon right now, pushing off Palm Goat, the Mountain Dragon, the third one. That's the only one that will spawn for the rest of the game. And I guess you could say if the Broncos do pick this one up, they'll be on Soul Point. After you kill your fourth dragon, you get the Dragon Soul, and the Mountain Dragon going to give them the shields. That's going to even cut into the Wyoming engage even more if they do able to pick up that fourth dragon.
And this is something that Boise State has really excelled in. Not only have they gotten every objective so far, but it's come out of all the team fights and games. Wyoming has had a couple of good engagements, but they haven't been able to turn any of those into objectives or towers at all.
And I think during that last fight, the team fight really fell apart when they did manage to catch Gimmick, but they left Red Hots completely untouched. Boise State's tank line was more than enough to peel for their remaining carry, and he's far ahead while this Ezreal, as we've mentioned before, just doesn't have items. He's actually now opted for the Stinger, which is going to build into a Triforce, so we are going to see the Manamune Trinity Force build, but he's so far behind at this point that I have to wonder if it even matters.
And I look at those items, and I talked about how most 80 carries have to build attack speed. Ezreal's not one of those. He has the Berserker Greaves. Ezreal does not auto-attack. You spam your Mystic Shot. That's how you do damage. So, to me, that seems like another mistake. What are the Berserker Greaves doing on Ezreal? I have never seen that in a build in my life.
Okay, so Ezreal does actually have additional attack speed scaling on his passive. The idea with Ezreal is that you're supposed to use an ability and then follow it up with an auto attack to be able to proc it, so you do still get a lot of damage out of it that way. Mystic Shot is definitely his safest option if he's fighting from a range, but if you get up close, you're able to deal a lot more damage output, which is part of the reasons why way back they changed Ezreal's Blink to deal additional damage if he moved forward instead of backward.
I still like to see Lucidity Boots because I think that's how they win, but Olay wants to start a fight. Death Charge is going to come on to Gimmick as well. He's going to get hooked. True Shot Barrage is going to rip apart the Broncos. Can't Get Dopamine the first one to fall. Gimmick going to join him in the graves as well. Dean goes down as well, and Olay wants to continue the fight. He's going to jump onto Wujin. He's going to be picked up there by Palm Goat and go into his passive. A fantastic engage by Wyoming. That's what they want to set up.
Once more, Gimmick is just eliminated before he can do anything in the team fight. Red Hots is pumping out damage, but it's not enough to put through all of the members of Wyoming. And now they're going to group up on the Baron as that incredible equalizer rips through Boise State's health bars.
As Red Hots is going to teleport in and try and stop this Palm Goat dueling him 1v1 right now, and the Ezreal's going to come out on top. A shutdown, and that all but guarantees a Baron for Wyoming.
Really unfortunate for Red Hots as Ezreal actually hits a power spike. As a result of that previous fight, Manamune finally builds up to its maximum power. So they are in a very good position, and that shutdown is going to be huge because he's going to be able to convert that into Trinity Force. He's now at 2 items and is able to is actually ahead of the Caitlyn in terms of item build because he's only got the Storm Raider Surge and the pieces for Infinity Edge.
And with that one engagement, they have completely eclipsed the gold deficit that they had and are now in about a 700 gold lead That is amazing. Such a good engagement from Wyoming.
And I think Ezreal might have had that mana immunity in that first fight. That's why they won it. And like I said, you can see what Wyoming built around. The Unstoppable Force, into the Slingshot, into the Equalizer, into the True Shot Barrage. Your team's at half health and they haven't even got on the screen yet. I think this means that the Mountain Dragon for Boise State is so much more important than you would originally think, because the Earth Soul gives you a bonus shield that builds up over time if you haven't taken damage. That just gives Boise State so much more health to work with to avoid these Wyoming engages.
On top of that, the magic resist scaling that you get out of the Mountain Dragon is going to work, especially when you consider that Caitlyn has bought those Mercury Treads, and that's going to give additional magic resistance on top of that. I don't think it's going to be enough to survive through that huge wombo combo that they're being dropped on by Wyoming. So Boise State needs to pick these fights in a way that they're going to be spread out so they don't lose multiple members in that combination.
The one nice thing here for Boise State is they still have 3 Tier 1 turrets to give away to this Baron buff. I do think if there is a lane that Wyoming chooses to shove, you just sacrifice your Tier 1 tower, because even though the Cowboys have the gold lead, they are so far behind on towers, they are so far behind on map pressure, that this Baron is going to be spent getting towers that you think you should be able to get. Unfortunately, Wooch in there, unable to get the ult. The depth charge is going to come in onto Gimmicks. Olay's going to jump into the back line. A perfect play from Dean, stops that, and there's the death sentence right under the tower. He's going to go into the Zac passive with the Equalizer out there. Woojin will go down to Palm Goat, but I do think it's a 1-for-1 as Olay goes down. But here comes the Unstoppable Force onto 3 Broncos in the back line. Witchell is so squishy right now, but it doesn't matter. Palm Goat picks up another kill. The Broncos had no idea Witchell was there. A double kill is where. Here comes the package as well, trying to jump onto Palm Goat. Immediately goes right over that wall. Gimmick has to flash away as well. And the Broncos are just losing members to this Cowboys team right now.
We're at the point where, unfortunately, Ezreal is now, in fact, getting ahead. They do manage to get an elimination onto Papa Francesco, who also was able to zone out so much with that Equalizer during the previous fight. But this Ezreal is now 8-1-2. We were talking about how long it takes Ezreal to scale. Well, he's hit that point. He has now become this terrifying mid-game powerhouse. And now he's going to just eliminate Red Hots.
Unfortunately, he is going to lose his life for that one. That's a 1,000 gold shutdown over to Gimmick. And the Dragon's up right now. Pongo, for all we've been talking him up, that might have been the play he didn't want to do, as Wuchin is going to try and engage onto Lole, trying to kill that jungler so the Cowboys don't have his smite, or at least push him off the Dragon. We do see Gimmick has already started it. Wujin chasing down this triple tank line, or at least double tank line of the Cowboys. Birdman's going to jump in onto Wujin. He's going to use his ultimate to stop them as well. The death sentence is going to miss. Dragon's health dropping low and low. Unstoppable Force is going to come in. It's going to come down to a smite battle. And Can't Get Don't Beat's going to pick it up. And now this fight is going to turn. It's a 5-on-3. Olay has to get out. Witchell's going to be the first one to go down. Birdman is just stuck there. Death sentence back in. That smite battle was huge. It's a Dragon and 2 for Boise State.
We cannot understate just how important winning that smite battle was for Boise State. Can't Get Dopamine not only denies a Dragon from Wyoming, which would give them a huge power boost on all of those tanks, but they also pick up the Mountain Soul, which allows them to survive that team fight, and then Gimmick is able to turn onto the members of Wyoming. They have a damage source in position, and now Boise State is surging towards this mid lane tower.
Equalizer is going to come out. Palm Goat, though, going to go down. Papa Francesco wants to pick up Dean, but it's not going to matter. He's dead as well. And just like that, Boise State has turned this game right back around.
That Ezreal honestly really scared me, but Boise State now has much more control over the game, able to eliminate all of those Baron buffs so they can continue pushing down on this tower. There's nothing that can stop them. Using Daisy to tank it up, they're going to grab an inhibitor on their way in.
So to be very careful. Witchell setting up an Unstoppable Force. Gimmick has to be very careful, but look, here comes Olay. He actually tried to slingshot in, but as we were talking about, look at those shields on every Bronco member now. That Earth Soul, Mountain Soul, whatever you want to call it, Shield Soul at this point for all you care. That is so important for Boise State. That shuts down so much damage that Wyoming can put out, and that's what their combo is built around. And if you can no longer get Boise State to half health with your Wombo combo, you don't have any more damage at that point.
We've also seen that there's a lot of support items being committed just to keep their carries alive. We see Trigger Seed being popped onto the Caitlyn. We've seen multiple times the Redemption being dropped in the middle of a fight, partially to heal the carries and partially to just force Wyoming to be zoned off a little bit, give them some time to breathe and to plan up their next move.
Yeah, the redemption, of course, since they have 4 melee champions for the Cowboys, it's going to do a lot of damage. As we've got a lot of team fights, a lot of gold exchanging hands here, Glovely. Is there any items or item builds you want to point out across these 10 players?
I think the biggest thing to point out is that as far as the top laners go, 2 items finished for Woojin, the Warmog's armor, which gives you additional health regeneration, which is going to stack on top of that shield, and as well as a, I believe that is, come on, brain, work with me here. It's a magic resist item, reduces damage. It is the
only thing I can think of is Abyssal Mask, and I know that's not the right
mask. It's not
Abyssal
Abyssal Mask. I can't remember the name of it. I'll probably remember it earlier or later. So Wyoming is going to step a Death Rush here as they lose a turret, so maybe not the best commitment of their time there. Actually, no, they picked up a turret off of their minion movement, so in the end, a good play by them. They are focused around this Baron here, though, so Boise State needs to be careful that they don't over-aggress.
Yeah, Boise State is going to be spending a lot of gold on wards, I have to believe, and for a very good reason. You talked about it, that Death Rush was set up there. We are going to see a fight devolving around the Baron, which sometimes has given the Broncos trouble. A teleport actually going to come out there from Red Hot to make sure he's in the fight in case something breaks out. For now, though, the teams are just sort of trading blows back and forth, but Boise State, usually when you start on Baron, most champions can't get over that wall. Yeah, Wyoming doesn't care about that wall. The Slingshot and the Unstoppable Force will say, what wall?
Boise State now does have aggression on the Baron, but they don't have complete vision of the area. Wyoming is looking to try and collapse, but Red Hot is going to push in on this Nautilus.
Birdman is going to get jumped on. He's going to land a hook. There's the depth charge. Going to knock off 3. Olay's going to join in as well for the Slingshot. True Shot Barrage going to come out as well, but it can't save Birdman. Olay is going to have that Zac passive pop, and now the Cowboys are going to try and jump in. Red Hot taking a lot of damage from Polgo, who now gets engaged up by their team. He's going to be the first one to fall. Witchell's all there alone. A flash by Papa Francesco over the wall, and Wyoming, their team's designed around one thing, and that is not what it's designed around. They need to get those 1 fights. They all split up. Witchell didn't have the Unstoppable Force, and that should be Baron for Boise State.
And when you split up like that, you leave your carry so incredibly vulnerable. Okay, now trying to do something on the backside of this fight. Red Hots is just going to delete him before he even has a chance. But if your Ezreal was off on his own in the fight, it was good that he was trying to go for Red Hots, was trying to eliminate a very powerful carry for Boise State. But unfortunately, he's left alone, and multiple members of Boise State were able to collapse on top of him because they were just funneling in one by one during the fight.
Yeah, it felt like Wyoming was trying to take about 3 different angles to start that fight when their team really revolves around one angle, and that is, can you land the Unstoppable Force Slingshot combo? So by having Witchell try and sneak around the backside, by having Birdman trying to hook someone from the complete opposite side, they really divide and conquered themselves. And I will say there, with how the pink wards work, it turns off a ward, but you do get that brief moment of vision. If I was Olay, he shouldn't have committed that going in that early. He should have thrown a ward down based on how much on health Baron had and then try and go in, not try and do some sort of cheeky engage like he did there and then just immediately die.
I also agree with that, and now we're in a situation where Boise State has the Baron, and they already have map pressure. It looks like they're moving down to the bot lane where 3 members of Wyoming are maybe trying to catch someone out, and they do have their big carry, their Ezreal, with them.
Yeah, Wyoming has to be very cautious of the Elder Dragon. Elder Dragon going to spawn now since somebody has killed 4 dragons, being Boise State this game. And the Elder Dragon, as we're going to see maybe an engage here. Olay is going to jump in onto Woojin, smack 2 people together. Now we're going to see 4 members on 2. We do see Kangadoping in the back there trying to do what he can. We're going to see Woojin, the first one to go down. His passive will come out. Equalizer come out. Unstoppable Force off screen there. Witchell trying to jump in onto Gimmick as we're going to see a 1-for-1. But Witchell is actually going to die there. Great job by Gimmick. Papa Goat is going to jump onto him and end his life. All the meanwhile, Red Hots is going to pick up that top inhibitor.
And Red Hots is doing a great job forcing pressure across the map. So even though they ended up losing that team fight, they do get an inhibitor. The only danger now is the fact that they've left this Elder Dragon open, and the only one who's really there to answer it is Can't Get Dopamine.
Holmgo going to go over the wall. He'll take off that Blast Cone, though the Elder Dragon, very strong right now, gives you the buff that anytime the enemy falls below 20%, you immediately execute them. So I do believe Can't Get Dopamine, with no flash, has to do anything in his power to steal this one away. Red Hots is there as well, but Birdman flashes over the wall. He's trying to slow it down. Red Hots is going to go over. Elder Dragon, and that's going to turn that entire fight around. his enemies are just getting executed left and right, and Red Hot says, who needs smite? I can pick it up with my missiles.
That was absolutely insane. We don't often get to see steals like that. Red Hot's diving over the side of that Baron pit, and not only did that secure him the dragon itself, but it secured him the eliminations off the back of it because of that power. It looks like we're actually having an issue. Is that a surrender? That's a surrender.
Wow.
So absolutely well played by Boise State, creating a surrender for Wyoming in game 1.
Well, boys, with the Elder Dragon, Boise State was going to end that game very soon. So, I mean, Elder Dragon is incredibly powerful right now in this meta. You rarely see it, but when you do, it's 99% of the time game over.
I mean, great play by Boise State. They had almost complete control over the game. I was a little worried there in the middle game when that Ezreal was able to turn things around, pick up some bounties. But in the end, their incredible objective control is what really nailed it for them.
What an amazing start to tonight's match in the League of Legends Mountain West Esports Series. Boise State versus Wyoming, the Broncos versus the Cowboys, and Boise State is certainly bringing the heat to Wyoming, continuing their momentum that they had from last week, and that steal on the Elder Drake. I'm just left speechless. What if Wyoming had captured that? If they had, would we be how much longer would the game have gone on?
I think a lot of it depends on how that fight would have gone. Because if Rumble and Ezreal die with the Elder Dragon, yeah, it's nice to have on a Scion, or not a Scion, on a Malphite or a Zac, but it's not as breathtaking because those are the ones who have to hit the minion. So I think had Red Hots maybe lost the dragon but still picked up a kill because Rumble was very low. Ezreal was a little bit of mid-health because he does have the lifesteal. If he kills either one of those, I think Elder Dragon's neutralized.
I do agree. Like, the Ezreal was the biggest threat. I do think it's possible to have your tanks potentially survive long enough if they focus the target, but at that point, you're really losing the fight anyway because you need to get Boise State's carries down, and they had multiple options to draw from.
But now if Rumble and Ezreal live, I think Wyoming could have won that game because, I mean, Flamespitter's just going to annihilate you. Ezreal's going to do what he wants. I was curious. I didn't kind of see the death timers. I know 2 members of Wyoming were dead when that started, so I don't know if they would have got the buff or not because they weren't there. So that would have been key as well. But that was a huge turnaround by Red Hots. I think we're still in this game, and probably Wyoming is pushing right now if they do get that, like you asked, Jim Mountain.
Well, it certainly was an amazing steal, and we just have to see that one more time here.
Here we go, putting on damage. Ends up Valkying over the pit and picks it up with an auto attack, actually. It looked like at just the last moment. There was no Zac there, so they were relying entirely on their own damage on the team. So they didn't have anything to confirm that. If they had the Zac there, that dragon was there, no problem.
And I think that was a mistake by Birdman, looking back at it in hindsight, of course. He flashed over and went to lock down Can't Get Dopamine, not knowing that Can't Get Dopamine didn't have his flash. Can't Get Dopamine was not going to get over that wall in any way possible. So what he needed to do was auto-attack Can't Get Dopamine and then immediately turn around and try and auto-attack or dredge line the Red Hots back to prevent him from going over the wall. So Birdman put way too much emphasis on a jungler that couldn't be in that fight no matter how hard he tried. I think that was a mistake that he made, but he has no idea that Flash is up or not.
Actually, there is the Root Caller as an option for the Ivern, so you could throw your Q over the wall. If it hits someone, be it an enemy or the dragon, you can jump to them over that wall, which would have also brought Red Hots into the pit, and he would have had the Valkyrie to escape if things went wrong. So I do think it was a good attempt to try and block off that pressure, but ultimately it really just came down to a smite fight without a smite.
Yeah, I mean, it really was one auto attack. It was probably sub 100 health. We couldn't quite see the health bar just because it was just off screen, but it was probably next person to right click the dragon wins the fight.
Yeah, something like a critical hit Trinity Force coming from a Corki who just jumped over the wall and has Gatling gun running. I think that's enough damage.
Yeah, definitely. I still don't have a lot to say just because we do have just that steal at the end. I remember the last time we saw that, we had Chizu on the desk with us, and he just absolutely lost his mind, and especially on the Elder Drake. We can see right here, League is not the only thing we're playing. We have a Galaga challenge right now, an arcade machine that people in the arena can play. Doc has set a high score over 44,000 points, and a prize is available to anyone who manages to beat that score. And that's just one of the fun things we we have here in the esports arena for anyone who wants to come down, cheer on the Broncos, and have the chance to win some prizes as well.
I'm just saying Doc's lucky I'm up here on the desk. I might have to make him cast that next game, and then his high score will be so obliterated, he'll have to just give me the entire arena at that point.
Well, I mean, I've got no hope. I'm not a big Galaga player. I'm happy to be here up on League of Legends talking about this incredible game. When you surrender like that, it goes to show that not only did you know that you were losing this game, but it's also a huge hit to your morale to do that. I think the surrender was mostly to try and reset their mindset and be like, hey, so we didn't do so well over the course of that game. Let's rethink what we were doing. Let's stop the game right now so that we're not thinking about all of the things that are going wrong, and we're going to think about how are we going to turn this around for ourselves in Game 2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think surrendering is any more demoralizing than just being executed by the Elder Dragon
Right.
buff. I mean, we all knew what was going to happen there. Boise State was going to run down mid, execute anyone who stood in their way, and eventually kill the Nexus probably within the next minute anyway. So I completely agree with you. I think that was, all right, guys, let's get that game out of our mind. Let's reset. Let's give ourselves some extra time and not just be like, oh, I just died because the Elder Dragon executed me.
Well, I don't know if we are going to take a short break or not, or if we are just going to be continuing on the desk. It looks like we are going to go to a break. Everyone just needs to catch their breath. Wyoming, Boise State, us after that steal. So we'll be right back after this, just this short break.
Boise State Esports. Boise State Esports is brought to you by Game Pants Arenas and Equipment, Omen by HP, and Archon Clothing, makers of official licensed Boise State Esports apparel.
Welcome back. We are currently in the middle of an amazing series in the Mountain West Championships. Boise State is going up against Wyoming in this first match of the night in League of Legends. They are 1-0 for the series. They just need one more to close it out and bring themselves up to 2-0 for the season so far. Joining me at the desk, as always, I've got Glovely and Fish here, and this is such an amazing start for the Broncos, especially since, like we've been talking, the pressure has been on them due to the way that the Mountain West is structured and only one team from each division is going to the finals. No semis. Boise State needs to basically win every game from here on out to have a good chance of going to the finals. And what a start they're off to tonight.
Yeah, they were off to a fantastic start. I do think Wyoming shot themselves in the foot a couple times. I'll be honest. I think the Cowboys could have managed that a lot better, but Boise State did a fantastic job. That Dragon steal, which was all skill by Red Hots, was fantastic as well. So, and making the opponent surrender. I mean, there's nothing better than in a game that matters, as Gem Mountain just mentioned. You can't afford to lose. We, of course, want Boise State to win, but Wyoming's in the same boat. They can't afford to lose. They came into the night undefeated. So the fact that that Dragon was able to be so game-turning they surrendered is huge for Boise State for Game 2.
I am so proud of Boise State. When I came here to first cast them, the first criticism I always had with them was their objective control. They were chasing after fights, trying to get more eliminations. Boise State completely swept every single objective that wasn't a tower. 4 dragons, Elder Dragon, Baron, both Rift Heralds. They had so much control and pressure on the map, and Wyoming just didn't have the ability to answer that.
Yeah, Wyoming had nothing. In Wyoming, we saw the potential. Their team fights were built around the wombo combo of the Unstoppable Force, into the leap in by Zach, into a depth charge across the entire team by Birdman on Nautilus. But that Dragon Soul, as you mentioned, getting 4 dragons so quickly, getting that Mountain Soul, giving them it's like a 400 or 500 shield. It's crazy how it scales. It just really eliminated that entire wombo combo. So I think Wyoming, you give them credit for what they picked. Unfortunately, the lack of their lack of objective control really is what cost the Cowboys.
As we move on into the next match, we were talking about, as we go into the next match, let's just do a quick recap of everything that's happening with our mid-game progress report. We were going to bring that up here. We are going to start on draft. I got to say, I'd probably give them an A. They had a great draft. They were able to get some favorites, especially the Thresh on Dean. And whenever you get some favorites through that your players are really good at, that is a high grade in my mind.
I'll give them an A-. I don't like the Caitlyn pick. I didn't like the double AD pick, but it ended up working out in the end for Boise State, so I'll have to dock a little bit.
I'm also going to give them an A. I questioned the Ivern, but they did a great job with it, using it to protect that Caitlyn and that Corki over the course of longer fights. Now moving on to vision control, I'm going to give them an A again. Boise State did a great job controlling their objectives with the vision. They knew exactly where their opponents were moving.
I'm going to give them a B+. There were a couple of times where Wyoming came out of nowhere with that wombo combo, and no one for Boise State knew where they were. So I'll give them a B+ because they did get caught a couple of times.
Yeah, I would use that same logic to go B+. There were a few matches mid-fight where they got caught out a little bit, but still pretty good. Overall, in objective control, if there's anyone who knows me, I like to add S, because that's in a lot of video games above A. I got to give them an S, a solid S there. They got all 5 dragons. They did leave Wyoming did get 1 Baron, so that prevents me from giving them an S+. But
yeah, I'm going to give them an S- just because they lost that 1 Baron.
I'm still going to give them the S+. Every single time they won a fight, they took an objective, they created pressure, and that's what won them the game in spite of a terrifying wombo combo on the other side. Now, looking at time management, like I said, they did a great job of capitalizing on those eliminations, so I'm also going to give them an A there.
I'll give them an A there as well. Anytime they got an objective, anytime they got an elimination, they turned it into something.
Yeah, I'm going to give them an S+. It was consistent throughout the whole game. Eliminations equaled objectives for them. Finally, in team fights, I counted about 7 main team fights there. They won 5 out of 2, so that's an A from me.
I'll give them an A as well. Their team fights didn't stabilize until they got that Mountain Soul, though.
I'm only going to give them a B+ because while they did have some fantastic team fights, some of those were incredibly close, especially in the early game, and that Ezreal became a serious threat at getting ahead.
All right, and then a final notes at the very bottom, I would say plays well with other, and we are already into the bans.
We are going to see similar bans here for Boise State once again. Actually, really everything's set up to similar. The only change from last game is it is a Thresh ban coming out from Wyoming. Everything else, though, the Olaf, Misfortune, Jarvan, the same for Boise State. Ornn and Nunu taken away, and that Ivern first pick as well.
Thresh, a very powerful champion in the hands of Dean, so I'm not surprised that they decided to swap that out instead of the Aphelios. But that AD carry, very powerful in the meta right now, is on the board. It looks like they're going to pick it up for themselves, forcing Boise State to pick their jungler early on in potential danger of having it taken away.
Yeah, I still think Boise State could have delayed a little bit there, but I do understand why they enjoy it so much. It was very successful. I'll be curious to see how Boise State wants to counter. I mean, if you look at the pros right now, Aphelios Senna is the matchup bot lane. I'll be curious if the Broncos want to bring out Senna, who is in a very strong place right now. Elise being picked up there by Olay, assuming he's just going to use that for his own jungling purposes. And we'll see how that fits on him. I think he really enjoyed the Zac because he can engage a lot. Elise doesn't have that snap engage. You've got to land a cocoon. You've got to land some sort of stun or slow with the spider. So I'll have to see how the Elise works out. It looks like Boise State going to hover the Xayah there. Which, please tell me if you're going to pick Xayah, at least pick Rakan. Please.
Xayah is going to be locked in. The thing about the Elise is that she has so much power and objective control early on. It's going to be Rumble picked up by Boise State. We'll see if that goes into one of the 3 positions Rumble can run, top, mid, and jungle. Don't forget that Rumble was a jungle pick, and he was meta for a while. He even has a skin, Rumble in the jungle. I'm just saying.
We're not going to go
I'm not thinking it's likely.
I know Boise State
possible.
flexes, but they don't flex that hard.
You never know. Can't get dopamine, don't let me down.
Well, I will say in terms of jungle, Elise last week was used to get some aggressive ganks against Woojin last time. We're going to see Oriana is the next pick for Wyoming. Now we're going to go to the bans. But she was able to catch Woojin off guard a few times last week. Not enough for them to win, but it would be interesting to see how that turns out.
Shockwave really the key to that champion, to be able to position it in a fight. I think it would have been great on their previous composition over the Rumble because you had so many things to deliver it to that fight. Not that the equalizer was bad or anything, so Rakan going to be banned away, so the Xayah Rakan combo is denied. Leona going to be banned on the other side. Very powerful champion in this meta because of her tankiness and engage potential.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what sort of ball delivery system that Wyoming wants to run for the Oriana. It just makes landing those shockwaves so much easier. If you have something like a Malphite, if you have something like a Nautilus, Bard going to be banned away there, so definitely targeting down Dean on the side of Wyoming. One more ban for the Broncos. Braum as well. We might not even have a support in this game at this point, so we banned half of them away. So get your unconventional support predictions ready, Glovely, because I think that's probably what we're going to see.
So Ornn is still on the board, and we've seen
Ornn's
Boise
banned.
State. Is he? Yes,
He was
that's
the first
right.
ban.
Ornn was the first ban. So Ornn is not still on the board.
No.
But we have seen crazy things come out of that bot lane before. I mentioned earlier that there are still some strong supports that are really meta right now. I could see Pyke coming in as a replacement for Thresh. Nami has been very powerful. Nautilus going to be picked away. I'm being told that I'm going to have my mind blown. Is it Garen? No, Akali is being
So
hovered
that,
right
to me,
now.
could be a Rumble top lane then. We'll have to see there. I was thinking maybe you can bring a Tom Kench. Tom Kench has also had a lot of play as a support as well, but when you're told to get ready to have your mind blown, you never know.
You could flex the Ivern down to support.
We've seen it. We have seen that. We have seen Boise State flex the Ivern down. There's the Maokai. So to me, that would be
Rumble over Kali support?
I would say Rumble top, Ivern support with a Maokai jungle thrown. You were talking about throwing in old school. That would be the old school prediction for me.
I think that we could see Rumble in the jungle and then throw Ivern down to support and Maokai top. So they have a lot of variety in the ways that they can set up their picks. So Wyoming has to pick very carefully as to the last pick. Tryndamere actually being hovered and locked in. So very powerful split push champion, but has a hard time dealing with crowd control. And Boise State has that in Xayah, has that in Ivern, has that in Maokai. Looks like it's going to be Maokai support, actually. That is a champion that has great lane control, has the ability to toss the saplings in the bush, grant himself additional vision for his team, create a slow to keep junglers from being able to engage as hard. No, actually, Maokai going to be shuffled up top lane, which I personally think is a great matchup for Maokai, but that means Rumble in the bot lane.
That is going to be interesting because Nautilus can definitely engage at any point he chooses to. There's going to be a lot of damage coming out onto that Nautilus, so I think the key here for Boise State is if this is what they stick with, they have 10 seconds left to just blow our minds even more. How much damage can Palmgo and Aphelios put out onto either bot laner for Boise State? Is going to be huge.
Well, we're going to see how these picks affect this match. This is the Mountain West Esports Series in League of Legends. Boise State versus Wyoming, the Broncos versus the Cowboys, the second match of the season so far. And Boise State is certainly on some momentum to maybe take this away and get it 2-0, but we will definitely have to see how it turns out.
I mean, I'm very curious. I mean, we are on 10-2, right?
I believe so. I could double check later.
I think we're on 10-2, which is when Akali, a lot of people thought she was really dead in this sort of scene because she was getting a lot of big nerfs. I think Riot had sort of gotten a little tired of her being so popular. So we'll have to see. Red Hots might still very confident on that. And then, of course, the Rumble bot lane is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Look, I know it's changed a little, but just let me remind you, last week, 15-4-5 on the Akali for Red Hots. If there's a player that can make this work, my money would be on him.
It's also entirely possible we're wrong and the changes haven't gone through, and I just have the wrong patch notes.
Lovely. This is what we have you up here for.
I mean, I was a little distracted playing Legends of Runeterra. It's a really fun game, guys.
Terrible.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit as we set up for the match.
So Tryndamere is key to one of my Legends of Runeterra decks that I've been running, but he's not been something that's been really meta in the mainstream League of Legends as of late. owing due to just the way that his kit is very focused on being able to split push, and he's really hard countered by crowd control. So any team that really knows what they're doing is able to counter him pretty hard.
But I do think the one thing you pointed out is the split pushing, and that's why you pick Tryndamere. Is not really for team fights unless he gets absorbently fed, which I don't predict seeing in this game. He's just going to push the entire game. He's going to force 1, 2, 3 members up to try and stop him, and then at that point, Wyoming can grab an objective. Maybe they get a dragon, maybe they get a baron, maybe they get another tower in a different lane. So I think the key here is going to see how well can Witchell split pushing, because split pushing sounds easy. I'm just going to go in top lane, I'm going to push until they come. There is an art to it. There is a very fine art to how many members can you bring up, how long can you distract them, and how can you make sure you still get out with your life. So I think Witchell and his split pushing is going to be key for Wyoming to winning this game.
I also think that they have the advantage of the fact that they are running a hyper carry into a Maokai, into Wujin. Now, Maokai does have a lot more survivability than some of the other top laners we saw, more than the Ornn, because he has the ability to heal himself. You have items that you can take that will limit Tryndamere's ability to just shove you in constantly. So I do think that the early game is going to be very key for Wujin's Malphite. If you can get that early aggression onto Trynd and set him behind in lane, it becomes so hard for him to scale up into that late game monster.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if you just prioritize ganks top lane if you're Boise State.
How do you think Aphelios on Wyoming side is gonna perform this round? Because Ezreal last round, if there was anything that gave Wyoming kind of a second light, it was how they charged up the Ezreal. How do you think the carry in the bot lane will turn out this match?
I mean, Aphelios is very strong right now, even with the round of nerfs that Riot had to get out to him as a newly released champion. You just expect those patch notes a couple months after release. But he is so technically sound. He has 5 different weapons. It's about managing your weapons late game, pulling off the right burst combinations, pulling off those long-range pokes. So if he's played well, he's a monster, but there's a lot that goes into playing him well.
I personally don't think that's necessarily as much of the case. A lot of my criticisms around the kit are that all of his weapons are kind of just universally good. There are some that are better in certain situations and some that are just overall better, but none of his weapons are bad in any given situation. I do think there's a lot of carry potential in that champion, and there's a reason why he's been one of the only 2 AD carry picks that we've seen consistently in the meta.
Yeah, I mean, he is very strong still. I think you're right. We're going to hop into the game. And I will point out, Orianna, that's another one of those champions that Boise State in this season has had problems with. Against Mizzou, Orianna was a massive thorn in the Broncos' side with those shockwaves. Expect Birdman to deliver as many Orianna balls as possible this game, because he is going to get engaging with the hooks, and he's probably going to have a ball attached to him as well.
So now I want to focus on this Rumble here in the bottom lane. We were talking about it earlier, and I'm not entirely sure how they intend to play it. He is running the Arcane Comet, so he's probably going to be used as sort of a poke mage, using the Electro Harpoon for the slow, for the crowd control, for the damage. Potentially set himself up in that way. He's gone with what looks like to be the Relic Shield, so he's going to have a bit more health, is going to be able to heal his lane partner up in Gimmick a little easier that way.
Any of these keystones standing out to you here, Glovely, while we wait for a early fight to break out?
So for the most part, Boise State is what I would expect. The Aftershock on the Maokai gives you additional defenses and gives you some strong trading power early on against that Tryndamere. But I also think it's interesting to note that Red Hots has picked up Electrocute as his choice for the mastery that he wants. He's going to have to be very quick about how he lands that. So a little poke already going on to Aphelios. Dredgeline going to be committed in exchange, but they don't get the Aftershock damage, so Dean is feeling just fine on this Rumble right now.
Now, how well Dean can avoid those Dredgelines, avoid a lot of poke damage coming out, is going to be very, very key for this bot lane, because I do think there is a chance that Aphelios and Palmgo could snowball if Birdman can land a lot of good hooks, especially if he can land one on the Gimmick, who doesn't have that beefy support that can block for him like we've seen before from Dean.
Dean is providing us a helpful reminder that Rumble in the jungle is a thing with that skin. Red Hot's actually getting a pretty favorable trade, does proc the Electrocute there onto the Orianna. but she's got the bonus magic resist that comes with carrying the ball around. And she's going to be feeling relatively safe under her champion. She's a really hard champion to eliminate or to even shove out of lane just because of how much safety she has.
And I will say something to point out here is we do have vertical jungling going on. Blue and red taking up and down as opposed to east and west there as Elise stole the Boise State blue buff, and then Kanki Dopamine returned that favor as well. Woojin going to get a root onto Witchell. A lot of damage coming out. Tryndamere, when he has that full rage, gains 35% chance to crit, so a lot of Tryndamere involves making sure you have a lot of rage, but also have the ability to heal yourself when you try and get away.
So it's great to be able to pressure a Tryndamere early on, force him to use that rage. Consider that your little lesson of the game coming from Glovely here, as he continues to push out onto this Tryndamere. Having a great job. He is getting shoved under tower, but he engages, uses the Aftershock. The Tryndamere forced to spin away in order to avoid taking more damage.
Yeah, it's almost like Witchell just is saying, I don't respect Maokai's damages. There's the hook on the gimmick. Root and the Ignite as well. The heal's going to come out. He's going to flash away. Ticking lower and lower, and that is first blood over to Wyoming.
How important to keep in mind that first blood went over to the Nautilus, who doesn't have that much power. Now Can't Get Dopamine comes in, flashes for the Root Caller. Akali chases under turret, but isn't able to pursue, and it looks like the changes for Akali have not yet come through, so it is not in fact 10.2, so I'm sorry about that.
Lovely.
Teleport committed to the top lane as Weichel comes in against Woojin, who is going to hold off just fine. One of the advantages to this Rumble here in the bot lane is that the Flame Spitter allows you to continue clearing out minions even when your laner is gone, so you do still exert some pressure in there. Woojin doing a great job holding out against Weichel here.
Yeah, he is doing a very good job indeed. It's very, as you mentioned, it's so hard to gank in Orianna, so it's going to be something that's very hard, but I do think Witchell is setting himself up for a gank. He's continuously pushed all the way forward. As we're going to see, on to Palm Goat they go. The Ignite's going to come out, and he's going to go down. He's going to be joined by Dean, though, so it's a 1v1 in the bot lane. There's also another gank coming out in the mid. Red Hot's going to jump into Papa Francesco and get that one as well. So 2 kills for Boise State all across the map.
Can't Get Dopamine is the one who picked that up, and that's going to accelerate his support items into the later parts of the game very quickly. Cam put a lot of pressure on that map as Ivern doesn't really need items to be an effective champion, and that's one of the upsides to this jungler.
Yeah, the kill did go over to Can't Get Dopamine, so he is going to get a brunt of the gold, so that while he doesn't need items, he has gold to spend, so he's going to turn those into mobility boots. Here's the replay, and this is where you can see the power of the Rumble support. A ton of damage comes out onto Palm Goat, nowhere near the damage that Birdman can put out onto Gimmick in the same time.
We were talking last game about how the changes to the Drakes have affected the game, but that's not the only change that has happened in this new season. We do have those alcoves that we just saw where that fight took place. How's that affected the metagame, Glovely?
I don't think it's affected the metagame for the most part. I think there's a few niche cases where champions can go wander down there. I think we had a conversation during a previous game talking about how you could set a ward there to teleport and do something a little sneaky, but even that's a little niche there. We did see the flash from the bot lane to be able to engage on that fight. So as long as you can move in and get vision on your target when they move in there, I don't think they do too much to affect the game.
We are going to see the first dragon. Speaking of that, is the Cloud Drake, something that Glovely and I both agree is the most powerful dragon in this new meta. Gives you a 10% cooldown reduction that stacks with the usual 40%. So I would think if you're Boise State, you prioritize that. You see Olay's up in the top lane there. So if I'm Boise State, I shove out this wave and immediately rotate over to dragon.
That will be the only dragon of that type we see of this game, though, thanks to the way that the dragons now cycle. Looking at the champions, we do see that Tryndamere does have a farm advantage against Woojin. Does a great job shoving him under tower, gets the aftershock damage as well, but Elise is up in the top lane, and there's the attempted engage, but it's hard to engage on a Maokai. Ends up essentially wasting time. Woojin not even affected, and now Dragon goes over to Boise State.
I mean, ganking a Maokai is possible when you tower dive, when there's minions there. I mean, Olay walked in and took 2 tower shots because no minions had pushed forward. A great job monitoring the wave there by Woojin, preventing it from getting to his towers. So it was a great gank on paper, but when you don't have any minions to tank the tower, you just kind of wasted your flash for no reason.
And he certainly hasn't been put that far behind by this Tryndamere. Did end up having to use teleport to get back to lane, but he's got Ninja Tabi and he's got cloth armor, so he's going to be taking those hits just fine as he scales into the late game.
I would think the only problem here is I think that's exactly what Witchell wants, because he has not really shown any propensity to gank or try and kill Woojin. He's just content, I'm going to farm, I'm going to buy a coal so I get even more gold, I'm going to have a little more lifesteal. He just wants to get to that Tryndamere is split pushing and no one can stop him phase, as opposed to Tryndamere is super fed and no one can stop him phase. I mean, look at, he's just diving for CS at this point.
Yeah, the pressure he is able to put on the map is great. He does get the spin. Lockdown, not quite under tower though. Woojin trying to get him into the tower shots, but is still fighting him pretty darn well in spite of everything that's going on. Not taking a lot of damage from that champion, even through the full rage bar.
I think that key is going to be containing the Tryndamere. Who in the late game can 1v1 a Tryndamere? You'd have to say, once we get to 3-4 items, that's maybe what? Red Hots and maybe Gimmick, but that's about it. And that Undying Rage makes it so hard to 1v1 a Tryndamere if you're on a squishy mid or 80 carry.
Crowd control is really the key in the late game, so you need to have a carry who can get enough damage down, and you also need to be able to lock him down so that when he uses his ultimate, he doesn't use it to be able to run away or to continue jumping onto your carry even in the moments of his death.
So to me, as we're going to see another blue buff invade there by Olay having that timer, so Kanky Dopamine is not going to have access to that and be able to share it with his mid laner. That would have to be Gimmick then, because the feathers can root if you shoot them through and then pull them back through the champion. So to me, that means Gimmick might have to be the only person who can stop Witchell if he gets to the point where he can just do what he wants. But we'll have to see as we are nearing the 10-minute mark, though, Clovely. Some people are starting to complete items, unless you're Tryndamere and you have a Coal and a Doran's Blade. Anything sticking out to you?
Nothing particularly crazy. We do see the Hextech Revolver being built by Red Hot's first key item to finishing out the Hextech Gunblade. Also has the Vampiric Scepter, so that's going to result in a lot more lifesteal and sustain. Now looking down to that bottom side, we do see that only an Amplifying Tome has been bought by Dean so far. So he's going to be dealing additional magic damage, but the Rumble is a carry, so I'm questioning what he's building that into. Maybe a Rylai's Crystal Scepter to give his team a bit more crowd control and staying power in the field, to keep them inside his equalizer, to hold them for his team. It's not a champion that we've seen here before in the stadium, so I am really excited to see what sort of setup they're going to build for him.
The other thing that I think is interesting for Wyoming is that Olay is basically trying to feed Witchell anytime. I'm not sure he's left the top side jungle. He has tried 2 or 3 attempted ganks onto Woojin. None of them have been successful, so he's leaving the rest of his lanes basically open to any sort of gank, any sort of engage by Boise State if they want to roam. So clearly Wyoming is committing. We want to get this Tryndamere as fed as possible, as quick as possible. He backs, he buys a BF sword right there.
So it looks like he's actually built that Amplifying Tome into a Seeker's Arm Guard. So he's probably going to be trying to aim for the Zhonya's Hourglass, which does give you some additional safety. Meanwhile, Woojin actually commits the ultimate, and Red Hots goes over the wall, flashes, Shockwave comes out. Is he going to have enough damage, though? Yes, just barely enough, but he's going to trade the kill back over. Meanwhile, up in the top lane, Dean is going to go say hello, goodbye, and Olay.
Olay gets just squished there. Boise State knows where he's been this entire time. That was almost a great barrier by Papa Francesco, but unfortunately not going to matter. A 1-for-1 there, and that is going to be Shelly over to Boise State. In case you didn't know, the 2 Rift Heralds have 2 different names. They are 2 separate Rift Heralds. They are 2 separate entities.
Oh, what's the new one's name?
I believe Heraldina is her name.
Heraldina.
So Heraldina will be spawning here about the 15-minute mark. Boise State going to pick up Shelly. It's going to go on to Dean, so I'll be curious to see where he wants to put that.
I would have thought that they would have done some sort of cutesy rhyming thing, you know what I mean? Because they're Rift Heralds, that really doesn't go at all.
I mean...
Well, what would you call the second one? What rhymes with Shelly that still feels like the Rift Herald?
I mean, I'm one who can raise complaints, but in terms of finding solutions, I might not be the best.
As we are going to see, that looks like a Mountain Dragon, the second dragon to spawn, which means it's either an Infernal or an Ocean Drake that is going to spawn as the rest of the game is. Here we go. Depth charge going to come out. Dean going to be eliminated. A perfect gank set up by Wyoming.
Teleport committed, though. Red Hots moves down to the lane, but isn't able to follow up. Unfortunately, can't get Dopamine. Doesn't land the Root Collar. They do get a flash out of it, but Dean trying to engage and finding a bit more than he could handle.
We'll lay down there, of course, for that Mountain Dragon. we are going to see a bit of damage coming out there as well. So Boise has to be very careful about the Cowboys jumping on. That Red Hot's going to clear out some more to keep vision control on Boise State's side in that river and avoid. Wow, that hit him. I did not think that hit him. As we're going to see Wyoming, they don't really care. They're going to jump immediately onto this dragon. Boise State has just that one lone ward, but I'm not sure it gives enough vision for them to see, or if it does, they are going to just concede this mountain dragon over to the side of the Cowboys.
After that engage, 2 of their members had to back. They didn't really have a choice. And now we're going to see what dragon it is. It's the Inferno. The Inferno blazes, so that's going to see more destruction across the map, getting rid of brushes, getting rid of terrain, and now Boise State is going to answer by summoning the Rift Herald in the bottom lane.
Pick up some of those much-needed plates that are fading in just over a minute. Extra gold over to Gimmick and Dean as well. We are going to see Shelly go down before it picks up the tower, though. We do see Keiko Dopamine is there ready to siege. Olay is there as well. We're going to see a great dodge on the Cocoon, and Boise State just pressuring down this Wyoming bot lane. And meanwhile, I don't even know what Witchel's doing at this point. He's farming air. He is proxy Tryndamere at this point. Proxy Tryndamere. You saw it here first.
Red Hots has now come down to the bottom lane, so there's 4 Broncos here facing off against the Cowboys in this bottom lane. They don't have minions yet. They are moving them into position, but there's a turret, there's spiders. Looks like the mini turret is going to disappear now. And Boise State continues to pressure, uses the equalizer actually to zone off the Cowboys, keep them from continuing in this fight. So that's a really low health bar on that Elise. Red Hots is chasing, but not able to completely commit.
I think, unfortunately, Red Hot had to commit his Shuriken and his ultimate to get in there onto Olay, so he didn't have a second one. Good job there by Boise State, taking that first tower, extending that gold lead just a little bit to 300 gold. But I think, once again, Tryndamere is just free farming. He leads this team. He leads the game in CS right now. There's only a certain point you can allow Tryndamere to do what he wants.
Wujin is doing a great job trying to pressure him as a Maokai. Forces him back into the roots, and now he's got Red Hots coming up from the bottom lane. But remember, Tryndamere still has the Undying Rage. Wujin takes a huge hit, bleeding health bars. He is going to trade back, is trying to, but no, that's 2 eliminations now. Red Hots is on his own. 3 eliminations in that 3v3 fight, and really a lot of that bought because Tryndamere could survive through everything they had available. They didn't have any crowd control left over after the initial engage. Yeah,
Wujin had to use all of his crowd control to get Witchel rooted to allow Red Hots to get up there, and that's where you see the power of that Tryndamere, of that Orianna, getting that shockwave off that just basically eliminated Wujin from the map. So the one good news for Boise State, none of those kills went over to Tryndamere. He just got 3 assists, so he's not going to get as much gold. He doesn't have enough attack speed right now to really siege turrets like you'd want a Tryndamere to do.
He does, however, still have a bounty, and he's got a BF sword, and also has a dagger. Is probably going to build those into something like a Storm Raider Surge. Give him additional slows, additional crit, additional just everything that a Tryndamere loves to have. No,
he's
actually,
going to go Infinity Edge.
That's an Infinity Edge. So instead uses those daggers to build into a Berserker's Greaves. And now Boise State is trying to focus on this mid lane. Commits Daisy to the turret, commits Wujin around the backside to try and flank. Shockwave committed onto Wujin, though, and he can't get out. He's pinned in place and goes down. Thankfully, the elimination going over to Birdman on that Nautilus.
Yeah, Wyoming has just had terrible luck in landing their kills on their carry, but I have to wonder what Wujin was doing. I mean, I get you're trying to maybe set something up, but why just walk right past their tower? You didn't have any backup on your team. You didn't go in for a tower dive. I mean, that was almost just handing the Cowboys a free kill at that point.
Yeah, I do agree. It was a little strange there, especially since you already committed the Daisy and you knew that you weren't going to be able to flank from both sides. Maybe if you had the ultimate and you used it before that engage to allow the rest of Boise State to continue fighting under the turret, because then you draw aggro and your teammates are at least there to back you up.
We are going to see that might turn into a tower dive for Wyoming. Birdman's going to get the root onto Dean. Ignite's going to land. Equalizer comes out. Dean's going to have to use that stopwatch to just stay alive. And Birdman, the one who gets killed. And that's a shutdown with his 3 kills. We're going to see Palm Goat how to flash away. A root is going to land onto one member of Wyoming. Olay is going to repel up in the air, but he has no targets to get to safety. Another shutdown for Boise State.
Boise State did such a great job of controlling the aggression, of controlling who was being focused on. Dean gets out with a sliver of health. Gimmick gets out with less than half his health bar. Unfortunately, it does look like there's going to be a lot of focus on this mid lane turret. It looks like they are going to back away.
Meanwhile, Witchell did pick up, this would be his second turret during that engaging in that split-pushing Tryndamere that we talked about in the open there. And we were wondering why Dean was rushing Azania's Hourglass, and that's why. As we're going to see Red Hots, he's going to jump right in on the Palm Goat, take a lot of damage, go into his Shroud, and then jump right back in. But unfortunately, Papa Francesco is going to pick up that kill, but Palm Goat goes down as well.
So a bit of a trade back and forth there. This Orianna doing a great job of just keeping alive, of poking out the Akali and controlling a lot of these lanes. Not really able to completely turn around fights, hasn't landed any team fight ultimates. Most of them have landed onto a single target as the first Infernal Drake of the game is now up, and there's a lot of fighting around it.
Yeah, this might turn into another smite battle there, though it does look like Boise State will just concede that Dragon over to Wyoming, protect themselves with Red Hots being out of the fight. It was a 5v5. And that's going to be a lot of pressure, but Olay's going to get jumped on by Woojin. No follow-up, though, from the rest of the Broncos, so they will disengage. Equalizer committed by Dean as well. So that's going to be turned around. Shockwave's going to land on to Dean. Here comes the Roots out from Woojin. Depth Charge going to land as well as Bergman in on the back line. We're going to see the Zanya's Hourglass out onto Dean, but he is not in a good spot. Flash is going to get away. Papa Francesco dropped in very low. Shutdown's going to go over to Red Hots there, and he is now in the back line. Gimmick going to get a kill as well. A great turnaround there by Boise State.
It looked like such a dangerous situation because Boise State only had tanks, but the fight is still continuing now. Woojin jumps on top of Olay, and Tanka Dopamine is the one who picks up the elimination. There even vision in that bush, but nothing committed. But on the other hand, Weichel is on the other side of the map and continuing to put pressure on Boise State, now taking an inhibitor turret, and there's no one there to answer him. No, Red Hots and Dean have moved down to answer, but he still takes the turret. In exchange, Boise State only picks up an outer turret.
Yeah, that was a great job by Boise State. I thought once Dean missed the equalizer, that would be in disengage, but a great job turning that around by Boise State. But it doesn't matter how many team fights you win as Witchell just is going to spin right over the wall. He's going to pop the underlying rage, but it doesn't matter. Blast Cone is taken away. A shutdown goes over to Woojin, so they finally stopped that Tryndamere.
So Tryndamere going to give all that gold over to Woojin, who currently doesn't have any magic resistance to deal with the Elise, to deal with the Orianna. So that might be an investment. Yes, is going to pick up the Spectre's Cowl. Probably going to turn that into a Spirit Visage for the additional healing that he gets off of his passive to survive through these fights. So great for Woojin to be able to pick up that gold, be a stronger front line for his team.
I think the one problem is while Boise State is winning every team fight, you're still seeing the power of Tryndamere. He has gotten 3 turrets down. An inhibitor is exposed in the bot lane for Boise State if that's what he wants to get, or he can try and push maybe top side there, let his team capitalize on that. So the Broncos have to be very careful and really start considering sending someone down to at least stop him, because all 3 of those turrets he got, no one was there to slow him down at all.
There are 2 members of Boise State now. Dean and Gimmick have both committed themselves to the bot lane to face that Tryndamere, but they don't have any crowd control. No, they do have Can't Get Dopamine looking on the sideline. That's 3 members being committed for that one split pusher. So a lot of focus being brought down by this top laner. That's exactly what you want to do as Tryndamere. Draw as much of the team towards you as you can so the rest of your team can get objectives. Although they haven't been picking up anything in his during his pressure.
Yeah, we almost saw a Dredge line come out, but this is where Wyoming, the other 4 members, really have to complement that Tryndamere. He is distracting 2, even 3 members down there as well, as we see Woojin setting up some sort of river game. And there we go. Wyoming's going to turn that into a Baron. They know there's 3 members down there on Witchell, so they're going to try and turn this around. The Broncos, meanwhile, do want to try and pick up this kill, not make it worth nothing. Olay's going to die to Baron, though. That is a terrible thing for Wyoming. They don't have their smite anymore. Gimmick's going to pick it up, and the Cowboys have to disengage. That is terrible management on that. We're going to see Red Hot, though. He's going to get depth charge, diving through the enemy line. Taking Dopamine's here as well, going to pop that Daisy, and now the Cowboys find themselves in a very scary position. Birdman is going to be the first one to go down. Palm Goat now finds himself isolated as well. He's going to fall, and Wyoming had everything there for him, and it just all comes crumbling apart.
Losing their jungler on that was huge. Olay has been having such a hard time having an impact on this game. We're talking failed ganks. He gets eliminated by the Baron while they're trying to do it. Needed to back off and let the rest of his team tank it for him. Because he went down, they didn't have that smite pressure on the map. So Boise State now, when they would have been in a 2 versus 3 situation, instead going into a 2 versus 2 and one that they found favorable.
Olay is going to have to repel over the wall. Baron goes over to the side of Boise State. Wyoming's nightmare situation just came true.
I don't know if I've ever seen a team jump on Baron and then one of their members actually gets eliminated by Baron. And all the time I've been on desk, I haven't seen that.
I've seen some crazy stuff. I once saw a Malzahar get a pentakill by, and the Baron by dropping the Maleficent.
The terrain editor is the proper word
not
for
the terrain editor. The what do they call that one? Like, there's a very naughty term for it that the community uses that I'm trying not to use.
Malzahar Ultimate is what you're looking for.
No, not the Ultimate. The Malefic Visions. There we go. It's a damage over time thing, and when a target gets eliminated, it passes on. So he eliminated 5 people and then the Baron because it was just so low and he was doing so much damage to them. That being said, it looks like Weichel is still in the bot lane and he's now doing an inhibitor. And Boise State is not answering him, instead favoring this dragon. They are going to lose the inhibitor. And if Weichel keeps pushing, they could lose more.
Well, unfortunately for Weichel, he doesn't have any minions. His nearest minion wave is actually all the way up by the T2 turret for Wyoming, so he's not going to be able to get anything more off that. And I do understand for Boise State why you would let him do that, because you have the Baron buff. It's easier to match a split pusher when all of the minions he has to kill are empowered and taking less damage. So Boise State committing with that Baron power play is going to actually just try and push as much as they can. They're going to get a tier 2 turret in the mid, and now they realize that Wujin has a much easier time entering Tryndamere because he's just going to buff every minion that Tryndamere has to kill.
Absolutely, and Weichel forced to back away. Dinning did back in order to try and answer him. There is pressure in that bottom lane from the super buffed minions, but Boise State is putting a lot of pressure in the mid lane as well, and they have some time before they have to worry about that turret.
Yeah, we are going to see that super minion slowly pushing down in the bot side, but Boise State wants to turn this around. They're going to jump onto Palm Gold. He has to flash away. Going to get the shield from Orianna as well. We are going to see Daisy come out. Here comes the ultimate down from Wujin. This is once again a zoning ultimate, though, but it might be a re-engage for the Broncos. Shockwave's going to land onto. Featherstorm's going to come out, so Gimmick can avoid a ton of damage. Birdman is a target, but so is Palm Goat. He's going to get caught out. Wujin is taking a ton of damage. The Cowboys are focusing the one tank the Broncos have. Red Hot is finally going to go down. Wujin dropping very low. Undying Rage going to come out from Witchell. He has to spin away. Dean going to have to use his Zanya's Hourglass. It's not going to keep him alive, though. Doesn't matter. The Broncos still get a turret and an inhibitor for that fight.
Boise State, the Broncos are just buying so much time for themselves in these fights, which enables them to continue just dealing so much damage through the minions, through auto attacks, just delaying any attempts from Wyoming to be able to stop them or shove them away.
Yeah, and I don't understand why Wyoming was focusing Wujin there. I mean, why are you trying to focus on a tank? They did kill Red Hot, but that was after Palm Goat got eliminated. I mean, target priority for the Cowboys has to be huge. I think these fights are winnable. You just have to pick the right target. Try and find a Gimmick. Try and find Dean. Try and find Red Hots. Wujin should be the last man you ever even think about looking at.
One of the things that we've seen consistently in this game is the struggle with that Shockwave. They haven't managed to land it on more than one member of the team. In that previous fight, the only one who was caught was Gimmick, and he still survived, still Featherstormed out of the way later on because he didn't have to commit it to dodging that ultimate because he was able to survive it straight out, and the lifesteal just kept him going throughout the rest of the fight.
Yeah, that Featherstorm was huge. I mean, I do think you could have landed a better Shockwave if you are Papa Francesco, but he was doing whatever he can. So I'll have to see. Witchell, though, has no idea. Boise State knows he's there. Olay is there, going to get that stun, but that Elise is so far behind, just 2-4 with 104 CS. So he's got a long way to go. The Broncos going to try and slow this down. They're going to jump onto Witchell. He spawned in the wrong direction. No ultimate, and he is shut down, and the rest of Wyoming might have to disengage and give up this tower.
Undying Rage, the ultimate key in Tryndamere's entire kit, but not able to commit it. Now Dean is running down this Aphelios. Palm Goat gets caught by the Root Caller. Dean is going to pick up the elimination. Red Hot's over the wall, tries to find Olay, does dive in, activates Zonya's Hourglass, thank you, as the ultimates come through. Boise State has control now of this base, using Daisy to take turret shots for them as they try and find this Nautilus out.
Birdman taking a lot of damage. He is going to be the next target. Gets knocked up there by Daisy. Flashes away and is just going to survive, but the Broncos don't care. That's one Nexus turret down. The second one's going to follow very quickly. Featherstorm there to dodge the cocoon, and the Broncos have their sights set on another victory. We're going to see the Zany's Hourglass come out from Dean. The Broncos trying to take down this Nexus, and they're going to get it. That is a 2-0 victory for Boise State.
A bit more dangerous and a bit fewer objectives, but Boise State ultimately controls the game, controls the map, and takes the victory.
Yeah, I think for Wyoming, everything was there for them. They just never could capitalize on that. I think if they get that Baron when they tried, that would have been huge. We could still be fighting. So I'm very, very disappointed in Wyoming that they couldn't kill that Baron. Having Olay die to that Baron was just so disastrous. And if you can't take advantage of a split pusher, every single team fights a 4v5.
And one of the downsides of having that split pusher is the fact that you are fighting a 4v5 whenever the opposing team tries to commit. Yes, Tryndamere is very good at being able to shove those waves, but you needed tools to be able to do that quicker and easier and more survivable. You needed the Undying Rage to be up almost constantly, because when they did come for Tryndamere, they came with the crowd control to lock him in place to prevent that Undying Rage from allowing him to escape.
Yeah, it was very crazy here. It was impressive. I think Wyoming, once again, just like in game one, we were so close to the Cowboys finding victory. They just couldn't quite manage Tryndamere split pushing properly. And like I said, that was the key to the game. But that's enough of our analysts. We do have an interview coming up after that game.
Yes, indeed. I am here after that amazing game, that amazing series. You are 2-0 for the season. Tell us the time management and the objectives, getting those from. I remember Glovely, one of his main criticisms when he first started looking at the team of League of Legends was turning eliminations and team fights into objectives. And that came together so great tonight. You were every team fight that came out in your favor, you took dragons, you took turrets. How did that work out? How did all that team communication come together tonight?
Well, it mainly just starts with one small thing that we can capitalize off of, like pressure in lanes or just getting a kill, and we know that, like, hey, if we get this kill or make this dive happen, then we can get dragon off of it. Or like in the mid and late game, like once Baron spawns, if we just get a couple picks off of like vision control, we know we can get Baron. So that's how we know.
Now, as we've been talking about, the way the Mountain West is set up this season is there's only one team from each division that's going to be going on to the playoffs. How is that affecting the team mentality? Obviously, you're off to a great start with 2-0, but it's got to be high stakes every single game, knowing that you basically almost have to win every single one.
Yeah, it's definitely high stakes for sure. We're kind of in a little bit of a rough spot, but we're really just taking it game by game, week by week, with a lot of odd reviews and stuff. And yeah, like we're just going to take it 1 week at a time, and hopefully by the end of the season, we'll be at the #1 spot.
Well, you're rolling forward with a lot of momentum, 2-0 so far. Congratulations on your win. We wish you the best of luck in the future matches. We're going to head right back to you on the desk, Fish.
Thank you, Jeb Mountain, for that interview with Dean. The Broncos take down Wyoming in Mountain West play. 2-0 here. As you just heard, the Broncos move to 2-0, but a lot of work cut out for them with just one member advancing to the championship game in Vegas. That was a fantastically played game by Boise State. There were a couple of errors. We're going to catch some replays here. This is from the first game here, and great play by Dean. I think Wyoming immediately regretted giving him that thresh.
I do think that one play right there really catapulted Boise State into the lead, because they were able to get it on Gimmick, and he created so much pressure that they focused so much attention on him and took it off of Red Hots, who here we can see during this fight is off on the side, out of the way, is able to put down damage just consistently across the multiple members of the team.
Yeah, and I think that the problem with that is Wyoming didn't have Malphite. He's bot lane trying to push, trying to get gold. So Boise State did a great job in game one, taking advantage of Wyoming in situations like this. Yeah, they have the Wombo combo, but there's only 3 tanks alive, and that was a great smite steal. We saw a better one that didn't need smite, but that was a great smite steal. I can't be goat mean. That was for the 4th dragon, and that really changed the game, I think.
Absolutely, and that turned that team fight around. We talked about it in the moment because the Mountain Soul gives you so much more tankiness, and it gives you health back on your jungler, and it enables Gimmick to be able to turn over the middle of the fight. And at this point, they had so much pressure on the map because of this.
And Dean did a great job, as he always does on Thresh, making a ton of plays, CCing almost every single member of the team there, doing a great job locking down whoever he wants. Even sometimes, too, he flayed Palmgo and then immediately death sentence onto Papa Francesco. That's insane. But, yeah, I think that smite steal that we saw there by Cake, I don't mean really a smite battle. It's not like anyone was really winning that fight. That turned out to be really the turning point for Boise State.
I'm going to be seriously surprised if that's not our #1 play of the game tonight.
Well, there was another smite,
That's true.
Dragon Steal, that we didn't see in that replay.
Both of those were pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
We saw a great play across the board from Boise State.
Well, hey, you two. It's great to be back on Dusk, which I find myself. Do you have any final thoughts for how tonight turned out for League of Legends?
I thought it was a great job by Boise State responding to adversity. Despite the 2-0 win, there were times where we thought that Wyoming had a chance. I mean, Ezreal, Palmgoat was I think 9-2 at one point, and just unfortunately couldn't capitalize on that in the second game. Wyoming, I think at one point had an 8-4 kill lead as well. So a great job battling through adversity for Boise State, using those objectives to sometimes anchor them through a less than spectacular mid-game and eventually end up with the wins.
And it really was those objective leads that allowed them to cover up some of their weaker points over the course of the game. They did a fantastic job using those and then catapulted themselves into victory.
All right, let's just do a quick review of the report card, which we did mid-game. Would there be any adjustments to what you saw?
I don't really know if I would make many adjustments. I think there were a couple times in that game where vision control lacked enough for me to bump them up to an A, so I would have to say no. I am very happy with the report card I've given them.
Yeah, I would say too. They had a great night. I guess for objective control, because the Master Drake on Further Reflection was such a great steal, I would maybe add a plus, but that would be the only change I'd do.
I'm a little iffy about letting them keep that S+, due to the fact that they lost so many objectives, so many towers unanswered, and lost 2 dragons as well in that second game. So I'm going to turn the S+ down to just an S-, but great job.
Alrighty. Now, that is going to be doing it for tonight. Excuse me. And doing it for tonight in terms of the actual gameplay, but we still have a little bit to look forward to. We've been doing some replays. We're going to be looking at some of the top plays of the game as well as the top player. So a lot still to reflect on tonight.
Yeah, I'll be very to see who is the player of the game. I mean, I think there's some obvious choices. When you steal a dragon with no smite, that always helps your case. I also think that'll be the top play, so I'm very curious to see what has been chosen as those #1 plays and player of the game honors.
I do think Red Hots is definitely a top contender. He created so much pressure on the map because of the damage he put out, because of that dragon steal. But I also want to give some attention to Can't Get Dopamine. He's really stepped up in that jungle role, and the Ivern did so much for his team in being able to create additional targets for turrets to tank, to absorb skill shots. He threw down shields onto Gimmick and Red Hots, which was what allowed them to continue carrying. And of course, he had a dragon steal himself, so don't count him out yet.
One thing I wanted to just point out is how many people we have here in the arena. It is a great showing tonight, and we still have the Galaga Challenge going on and someone trying to get the high score. I did peer over, and someone had stolen the high score from Doc, so by a few hundred points, but still open to a top player to take it. A top player, just like the top plays that we saw tonight, and this is #5.
This was a great job here by Boise State, disengaging from an attempted tower dive. I think Birdman wishes in hindsight that he didn't hit that hook, and then immediately turning it around. Palmgoat had nowhere to go. Neither did the other member who gets rooted there. That was a great job by Boise State. I think in the end, Wyoming wishes he would have missed that dredge line.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate for them there. Sometimes it's difficult to be an initiator because you don't always have the perfect angle. Now at play #4, we're focused around this dragon fight, and this is when the dragon steal, or the dragon claim technically, since Boise State was the ones doing it, it really turns this fight around in the middle of it.
And we talk about the smite steal. That was a great job. As you see, Olay was being zoned out by Gimmick and Dean as well. So I don't even know if he got in smite range of that, but it's still a great job securing it. There's a lot of pressure in those situations.
Play number 3, it's once again another team fight. And in this scenario, we see Red Hot's off on the side, and this ultimate comes through. Unfortunately, doesn't manage to land, but Woojin does create a split in the team, which Red Hot takes merciless advantage of.
Yeah, that was a great job there, and while Woojin didn't get the ult, as you said, he split the team up, didn't allow them to group it together. Number 2 here, we are going to see this is once again from that game, and Olay was just so aggressive, and this was what I had in the moment, as we see Woojin's going to do a ton of damage. Everything should have gone Wyoming's way, but Papa Francesco didn't get there until the disengage was happening. So they had a lot of tanks and just not a lot of damage, and Boy State did a great job saying, you can ult me, you're just going to tickle me.
And really, the amount of damage that we saw coming off of Woojin was crazy. Like, we saw him ult in, follow up with a Q, and that committed so much to that fight.
I think I know what this play is going to be. Yes.
Oh, yes, there's no way it couldn't be.
Oh,
we didn't get to see it. There it is. There's the steal.
It cuts away, and then all of a sudden, hey, it's stolen.
I mean, that's basically what happened to Wyoming is we're going to use the power of time and space to go backwards and show you this full play. Dragon is so low. Red Hot goes over the wall and steals it with it. That was a 300 damage attack. That's how much it had. 300 health. That is one attack, and that completely changed the game because Elder Dragon is so powerful no matter which team has it, even if you're so far behind like Wyoming was.
By the way, I just wanted to add, I did think of another name for the other Rift Herald that matches. Nelly. Because when it charges the tower, all you can say is, whoa, Nelly.
I like it. Shelly and Nelly, we're going to do that.
Yeah. One other thing we want to do a quick update on is the Galaga Challenge. Doc started out the night with a high score of 44,100 points, but someone has topped him with 41,810. So that is the new score to beat. There are still a lot of people trying to beat the challenge, and that person, 24,000, was well on his way. So we'll see if we can keep that momentum up. Speaking of momentum, Boise State is off to a great start tonight in these Mountain West games. That was the second Mountain West game for League of Legends, but now the first one for the Overwatch season starts coming up right after this.